All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Evan Aldo here. If you enjoy the content, always appreciate you guys smashing a like button. So I was stopped out in profit on my Ethereum long, and ultimately, right now, I look at kind of the market, and I mean, some things are definitely still ahead. The bad jobs report is what brought this down, and in terms of other news, Trump tariffs and all that. So the big thing everyone's talking about, and by the way, if you guys want to trade on, big thing everyone's talking about is this right here. But if you guys want to trade, check out BidFi, check out BloFin, 20% off your fees for life. Could be some good potential longs here. I'll post some more, in the Discord as we get there. It is the weekend, so be careful. Maybe wait until Monday. Generally, is a better time to trade. 25% off your fees for life. You sign my link on Bitunix. So check that out. BidFi is 20% of your fees for life. A lot of really good trading bonuses here, so check it out. And 80% chance September of a rate cut. So essentially, what does that mean? 82% now. It's usually when you get that high, unless some unpredictable thing happens, and it would be very unlikely. Like, it would be very unlikely you see a pause rather than a cut in September. October, they're factoring in 2 cuts, so it seems pretty likely as well. December, I think, is 3. Is that 3 cuts? Yeah, 3 cuts right now. So those more likely could change, but it's probably going to be September that we do see the cut. You do have CPI coming. I mean, even if that's bad, they probably, or elevate or whatever, they probably still will cut at this point. It would have to be like really bad or whatever. I think this guy's putting a lot of pressure on Powell, and so is everyone kind of else. Yields are finally coming down, so let's look at what I think for the market. What do I think in terms of this pullback? What do I think for the market? So big area right here at 108. I would think you would hit a bottom between 112 to 108, and I'm starting to think that it may be a little bit more likely that August is more your bear month rather than mid August to mid September. It may be happening a little bit sooner, but 12% here, so it could be kind of a double little summer correction, another 12% down to 108. That kind of area, your money flow would kind of support this on a lot of these time frames. What would you look at for a potential bottom? Maybe a trigger wave on the daily if that does form, by Monday, Tuesday. That could be where you're kind of, off to the races, off a little bit more. So you could do this in a couple more days and then still have a green August. You could do something like that. This is a very volatile market, as you can imagine. Money flow is getting a little bit worse in some of these with trigger waves. That weekly, if you get that red dot, I would be more inclined to think you're going to 108. But if you do, bounce off of 113, 112 right there, then you potentially could go up higher. So a lot of potential volatility, and I think the betting odds, it's the quickest I saw odds for like rate cuts change, just back and forth so quickly since yesterday or since the meeting, and it could lead to some volatility here potentially. Not always though. Bitcoin always could surprise. It could be boring. So yeah. ETH is a little bit better, kind of, it's been holding up a little bit, pretty well, bleeding slightly, but holding up very well against Bitcoin. I think you'll continue to see that at least into next couple months. Higher low right here. If you hold here, you could go down to 112 for Bitcoin and hold right here for ETH. You're in that type of environment. Now, what would I be looking at? I got stopped out in profit on my ETH long finally. I kept rinsing and repeating, just adding to it. What am I looking at to potentially re-enter? Trigger wave on the 12-day or 12-hour, excuse me. Things of that nature I'd be looking at. Now, it does get a little scarier here. That 4-day does tell you may be going down to 3,300. We'll see what happens. Sometimes in these more bullish areas, they got ways to kind of scare people away, and then it bounces. So tough to say. My guess, I don't think you would lose 3,300 if you do go down with Bitcoin, here, and then Bitcoin 108, this 33, and then into later on, up to the races, and you still can make that new all-time high by mid-August potentially. So just keep that in mind. I still remain pretty bullish on the macro here. DXY is kind of bouncing, now rejecting from this point. I think that'll generally come up. I'm not too fazed by that because when you look at it here in like May of 21, it came up as kind of we did crash in May of 21, but after, you did come up as everything came up in the summer. So I'm not extremely concerned about that. ETH versus others, you're getting to that potential top. I think it's still going to outperform others, at least for a week or two. Probably until ETH makes a new all-time high, I would guess. That's why I'm kind of looking at it there. And that's ETH, others being most altcoins, everything outside the top 10. And Bitcoin dominance, I think that's coming up a little bit, but I think you would eventually roll over here. I don't think, especially with more of the potential rate cuts coming, that would theoretically help Bitcoin dominance, go down more. I was looking at Matic, a few others, they had their correction, a little scary. Maybe we come down a little bit more. Hopefully we, see some bombs relatively soon. I don't think it's going to be too bad. ETH versus Coinbase is an interesting one. I mean, that could be a good trade. Move some from Coinbase over to ETH if you got it, but obviously not financial advice. Anything could happen. A couple others, SWE. I mean, you're forming what looks to be a pretty nice textbook reverse head and shoulders. If you're looking at 320, that would be a huge area, I think, to get into SWE. I mean, that's probably a nice, 20-30% correction, 27%er right there, reverse head and shoulders, and eventually breaking upwards. So that's what's good there. I don't know, ApeCoin, I mean, this is probably a weirder reverse head and shoulders. I think you might be able to hold 50-something cents here. This is kind of a garbage token at sometimes, but yeah, just looking at everything. S&P 500, this kind of coming down. I mean, if you break downward, I think a big area to bounce would be right around 609, 608. Something right there if you do come down a little bit more. But sometimes these things come down, and then you could even bounce here. We could bounce right now for all these markets. So we'll definitely have to see what happens. It's more of kind of a wait and see, and enter the trades based on what the market gives us. Probably come Monday. So that's what I would think would makes the most sense. Like, a lot of people try to enter here and they kind of get chopped up because the market finds a way. Like always, those weekends, it'll find a way. You know what I mean? You try to short long down there, nope. You know what I mean? The market, they find a way. You got to wait sometimes. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, right now. The other thing I wanted to show you guys, I think it was, fear and greed on Coin Market Cap, because that would still be, like, in terms of fear and greed, we're not in like that crazy of an area. And even, I mean, this is the most ridiculous TA someone could probably do. People would laugh at this, but reverse head and shoulders kind of forming on your fear and greed. So I think this would jump up to potentially extreme greed. Still could be sometime this month. So just keep that in mind, unless we go all the way back into the kind of the fear area. So I think it will jump up to extreme greed and then generally kind of stay there until we peak out, which would likely be in October. I mean, so that's what I would kind of be looking at there. So, to summarize it all, I think it's a pretty decent, buying the dip opportunity. Sure, we could come down to 33. Sure, we could come down to 108, but I still think you're generally pretty strong in the macro right here. So, yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed the update. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and check out the exchanges down below. A lot of good long setups, I think, are coming. Just a little bit of patience. BloFin, like I mentioned, 20% off, 25% off on Bitunix, and 20% off on BYDFI, all great exchanges. So I'll see you guys really soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.